On my retreats, I do a practice where everyone greets everybody. It's a little challenging on Sunday morning, time-wise and everything, but my experience is that it always kind of blows my heart open. Like, oh my goodness, you're not just visual objects out there. You're actually real human beings with all the usual stuff of human beings. The extraordinary, exquisite, pleasant stuff, and also the really hard stuff. It's all right here in the room. Anybody here for the first time? Oh, a bunch. My goodness. How brave. I always say when I ask that question and there are newcomers, my hope is that coming here will absolutely change your life. Or at least be a good fit. But if it isn't a good fit, keep looking, because you're on the most important quest of your life. Finding a place to be supported in your spiritual practice. There's nothing more important. And in Portland, there are representatives of all the great traditions of the world. So keep looking. And I have one suggestion. Look for someone who's been teaching for 30 years or more, because they've ironed out some of the kinks. All right. Beyond that, everyone is welcome here. Doesn't matter what your politics are, or your gender experience, or your language. Language is pretty hard without speaking English, but the teachings of the Buddha are really universal, and they don't require you to believe anything. And that's pretty powerful. This is not a religion. The Buddha didn't teach a religion, though most Buddhists, quote, in the world, take it as a religion. Actually, most Buddhists pray to the Buddha, which is absolutely absurd. And he was quite specific. It's like his job, his incredible skill was to help people have the experience he did of waking up. And so then we all get to be Buddha. We all get to be awake. And also we like to acknowledge that the land upon which we sit was inhabited for 11,000 years before we came, we the white people. And this appropriation of land has been happening, of course, all over the world. It's happening right now, right? People invading other people's land to take it. So I don't talk about that to make us feel guilty. Instead, it's to inspire us to never let ourselves do that, and to create an atmosphere of love in the world such that we would actually resist people that do that. So I had a poem, a little short poem. Oh yeah, it's kind of in that vein in a way. This is a poem by Kim Stafford, who's a Portland poet. His father was Bill Stafford, and Kim certainly took off where his father left off. He's taken it in his own beautiful directions. This is called Champion Your Enemy's Need. Are we on music mode? Thank you. Ask about your enemy's wounds and scars. Seek his hidden cause of trouble. Feed your enemy's children. Learn their word for home. Repair their well. Learn their sorrow's history. Trace their lineage of the good. Ask them for a song. Ask about your enemy's wounds and scars. Seek their hidden cause of trouble. Feed your enemy's children. Learn their word for home. Repair their well. Learn their sorrow's history. Trace their lineage of the good. Ask them for a song. That poem, just as I read it now, reminded me of the Avett Brothers song that has the ending. The last four lines of the song are, I have no enemies. I have no enemies. I have no enemies. I have no enemies. And as we now move on to the meditation, anything that we hold in ourselves as an enemy keeps us absolutely stuck. Because in the words of one of my great teachers, a man named Ajahn Sumedho, the first American person to practice in Thailand with Ajahn Chah last century, love means there's room for everything. It's a big statement. There's room for self-hatred. There's room for fear. There's room for rage. There's room for kindness. There's room for awakeness. Because what we are then is that in which it all exists. So please take a comfortable upright posture. If your eyes are open, take a moment to look around and see where you are. See what's here. Seeing. And if you feel comfortable with it, let your eyes slowly close, but you can also leave them open and parked. And notice the fact of aliveness in your body. It's alive. You may discover that there's warmth. In discovering this warmth and paying attention to it, you are connecting with a primordial energy in the universe, which is heat. Consciousness meets sensation, and it's heat. Fire. You might notice the life in your hands. You might notice where your body presses down into the floor, contact, pressure. And you might notice sounds. Hearing. In a very subtle way, inwardly in mind, you might notice the mood that's present. Is the mood pleasant, uplifting somehow, or unpleasant? Or it could be quite neutral. And please now inhabit the body. Awareness opens present in the experience of in-breathing and out-breathing. Each breath has a beginning. It has a rising to fullness. It has a decline and then a vanishing. And it's possible from mindfulness to notice that this is happening, breathing. And then we can make an intention to stay there, to use that as a kind of home base. And then, of course, it's likely that the mind will wander. Thoughts of the past, the future, worries, plans. These are not enemies, they're just thoughts. Hearing. So I'm going to go silent now for a while. Let us do this utterly simple practice of coming home, waking up. Being present. Very gently, with no violence. Noticing when the mind is wandering. And come back to being awake with breathing in and out. you might discover that the mind is really quite crazed at the moment, worrying, planning, restless and agitated. Or it could be calm and quiet, easily concentrated, full of equanimity. It could be a mind that is dissatisfied with the moment and is wanting something, desiring. Or similarly dissatisfied with the moment and not liking what's happening in the moment, wants it to go away. It could be a mind that's very sleepy and dull, thick, non-pliable. It could be a mind that's experiencing some doubt. Why am I doing this? Does this work? Could be a sad mind, a depressed mind, an anxious mind, or a confident, loving, open, spacious mind. Over time, we have every possible experience. And no matter what's happening, we have this old friend that's been with us since the moment of our birth. This old friend of breathing in and breathing out. We are participating in performing an exercise in consciousness. We're very familiar with exercise like going to the gym. In this instance, we're in the gym of the heart-mind, strengthening mindfulness, strengthening concentration, strengthening curiosity, strengthening tranquility. And we are actually altering our brain chemistry and our brain development. We're shaping consciousness which shapes the brain. And so we're planting fine seeds for our future happiness. And so, with great delight and gentleness, become aware of your body as it sits here, and particularly with the breath as it comes and goes. In meditation, we're always beginning again. We're not even so much beginning again, just awake here now, where there is no past or future, there's just this. Now, in the insight meditation that we've been doing so far, none of the content is of any importance. It's all a process. We're getting to watch actually Genesis. We're getting to watch the coming and going of experiences. And so there's a gradual deconstruction of that which we take to be I. And ultimately we discover that the I is part of the infinite vastness of life. There's also another tuning for us humans, which is I'm a separate person. I got born, I have my stories of this lifetime. I have my strengths and weaknesses. There are people I think of in my past and perhaps in the future. There's all these personal experiences. And it's to that level of the tuning of being that we might say simply, I love you, with your name at the end. And if that's hard to do, I would say take that as useful information. Because you're the only one of you ever. In hundreds of billions of galaxies, there's never been a you other than you. So why not incline the mind, heart toward loving yourself? It's very gentle, just the words floating through the mind, I love you. And don't forget your name. And perhaps reflect for just a moment on the suffering in your life. It's quite likely that something's happening in your life right now that's causing you to suffer. Be compassionate with yourself. Be really compassionate with yourself. And you might imagine, we get to use the imagination in this kind of practice. Imagine holding yourself. I know you're hurting. I'm here. Be present for the hurting, for the dukkha in your life. And please now bring your focus back to the aliveness of your body. Just feel it tingling, warm, cool, alive. There's no wrong experience. And particularly, perhaps bring awareness into your hands, what you think of as your hands. Into your arms. Here in the room, with the fans going, you might notice a slight coolness on your arms. Temperature. It's a kind of rippling coolness. And please allow awareness to open in your face. Again, that here, there's a little bit of that rippling coolness. And then awareness of your forehead. And then your eyes. And notice how you can move your eyes around inside their little orbits, their protected place. You can make circles, you can go back and forth. And now, very intentionally, please notice the arising of the intention to open the eyes. And then let that happen. Notice that it takes a certain effort to open the eyes. And then in the opening, keep your mindfulness turned on, and something very remarkable happens. Objects appear, seeing occurs. Normally we just take it for granted, but here, who is it that's seeing? Is there someone seeing, or is there just seeing? And to the degree that you feel comfortable with it, I invite you to look around the room, turn around even, and see your other selves, your other. And notice the magic that happens when your eyes make contact with someone else's. Even across the room, there's something we know. It's a very important skill, actually, to know when other eyes are on us, because it helped us a lot in survival and in mating. Oh. So, here we are. How you doing? How are you folks doing out on Zoom? Yay. Oh, Tracy, hello. I have a, a kind of humorous name that I put on what I'm about to tell you, which is, I call it plopping. That you're sitting at a stoplight and you suddenly become aware that you're there. And you can just plop into your body. It's like, oh, here's my body. And it's very different from being lost in the wandering mind. It's a totally different experience. Which reminds me, one of the coolest things that happened with my kids. I have two bio kids who are 42 and 39 and grandkids now, and 5 stepchildren that I've raised a lot. And but I only did this with my bio kids. When we were, you know, how those of you that are parents, you know how just ridiculously exhausted you are raising young children. I mean, the whole undertaking of raising children is absurd. But we get to a stoplight, and this is when they were old enough. Well, they would do it from the back seat too. That I would say, "You've got the light," and go to sleep. And they were so into it. I mean, they never missed, right? And the consequences, if they did miss, didn't matter. Someone would honk. But it was so cool to just relinquish control. And, what? That's green. All right, back. Officer, my child was monitoring the light. I wasn't. So I have a couple of announcements. One is I will be gone the next 2 Sundays. And I don't know who's teaching. So Jim won, and anyway, another very wonderful human being will be in the teaching seat. I leave next Sunday morning early, 6 o'clock flight, to go to Quadra Island, where I'll meet my friend Dawn, and then we will drive down the next day or so to a retreat center in Nanaimo, down Vancouver Island a little ways, where we'll be teaching together a 10-day retreat. And there's still several places available. So if you want to just cross out your schedule, you could come and join us. And there's still one $500 Canadian scholarship available. And also, if you're looking at prices, if you're paying in Canada, you take 25% off because the American dollar is so powerful at this point. That's one. Number 2, oh yeah, I finally got scheduled on the 3rd of August here and online. I'll be offering what I think is going to be a really very interesting retreat workshop in which I'll be sharing with you a model that I've created, which I call a map for the journey. And it kind of just lays out where we start as meditators and where we end, and all the various options in between, the development of concentration, the 5 hindrances, the 7 enlightenment factors, when it's time to be doing therapy, and so on. It's a very useful model. And I think it's useful because sometimes we lose track of the importance or the direction of what we're doing in meditation, because it's so much more than just stress management and relaxation, and a little bit of psychological control, emotional control. So you're welcome to come to that. You can find it on the website, I believe. And yeah. And you get to have, I think you get to have a copy of the map to go home. Oh, no, the map will be on my website. That's right. Speaking of which, just to push the website a little bit, with the help of David Mayer, a friend, a student of mine on the East Coast, I'm now posting, what are they called? Podcasts on my website. And there's already 35 or 40 guided meditations there. But at Brighton Bush last week, I gave really a dynamite talk on the Four Noble Truths. And when there are particularly good talks, they're going to go there. And also, you can also look on Spotify or Apple or Google, because as soon as they go there, they get broadcast out there. So if you prefer watching on Spotify or listening, you can get it there. Okay, phew. Any other announcements that I'm forgetting, Jim? It's kind of a quiet summer. Hmm? Oh, Donna. Oh, yeah. Right. And now for something completely different. This bowl here, this monk's bowl, was my bowl for a brief time in Burma a long time ago. My teacher told me to bring it home, which it was very odd. And then we created this center. I've been teaching in Portland since 1979. And along the way, Jim Dalton showed up and Doug Pullen. And in the year 2000, my teacher, Ruth Dennison, gave me the first check for $10,000 and said, here, start a center. And I went, I don't know how to do that. And she said, you'll figure it out and people will come to help. And in 2004, we bought this amazing building. And it's expensive in a way to run a meditation center. And we run on a shoestring. We're just squeak by, which we really need to do something about. But anyway, if you are touched by what happens here, if it helps change your life, then you can use the bowl here. There's a wood box back there to make a contribution this morning. But even better is to go to the website and make a monthly contribution. And one way to think of it is that I love that movie, Pay It Forward, that you're paying it forward. Your experience of that those front doors were there to walk in, and I'm sitting here, and Jim is here, JJ's here, and that you can, or those of you on Zoom, that this broadcast is happening, that you can support this so that the doors are there for the next person who comes in. And God, this is the end of a month of severe asthma. I have two doctors, and I asked both of them, what would have happened before medications? And they both said rather straightforwardly, well, you would have died with this. Though one of them said, at your age, you would have died much earlier or something else anyway. But pardon me for the throat clearing. I've been doing this here for 20 years. And I couldn't count on several hands the number of times that someone has come up to me and said, Robert, this place saved my life. Right? I was on the brink of suicide, or I was so strung out on crack or whatever it was. And then I came here and I heard the teachings and they made sense, and I'm now functioning well. I'm generative in life. And so when you make a contribution to PIMC, you're contributing to that. This is not I'll put it positive, this is an incredibly powerful institution. Its product is human consciousness and love. That's pretty cool. I will now stop and ask Jim Dalton to come up and do a little mindful movement. And this is a preview of the Dharma talk this morning. How many of you could name the 5 precepts? It's a perfect day for the 5 precept talk. I'm going to talk with you about the absolute foundation of a happy life. Now that's going to keep you from leaving. Okay, Jim, you're on. Thank you.
Testing, yes. Okay. I have a spot to stand in so the camera can pick me up. And we take this time after we've been sitting for a while to bring some relief to our joints and move, which is relaxing and healing in many ways, healing the tension that we've absorbed through the last week or the last month or whatever. But there's also another purpose for mindful movement here, is that the movements we make mindfully, with the help of a group supporting that, they'll stick with us. And then during the day, during our ordinary day, doing things that we're normally unmindful of. For instance, if someone asks us to pass the chili sauce or something, we reach across and we lift up and we carry across and gently set down and release. Reach across, lift, carry, and release. All sorts of things are happening in the nervous system. We're opening up the joints by stretching them a little bit. We're turning the spine. These simple movements are part of every day, and they can be part of mindfulness practice, bringing us here and now into this movement, this sustained movement, this releasing. So we do something called shabashi, which is a more formal set of gestures, but by the time we go through all 18, we'll touch base with all kinds of pressure points, acupuncture points. We won't puncture them, but we'll stir them up. The meridians, the channels of energy in the body, they get tight, they get stuck. Our lives are so busy. The atmosphere, psychically and physically, is tension building. So we get up in the morning and greet the day. Make room, like Sumedho says, make room in the heart for everything. There'll be some difficulties, and there'll be some beautiful red flowers. Have you seen the hummingbirds drinking at the red blossoms? In my neighborhood, there's a bunch of them. Painting the rainbow. Feel the weight shift from one side to the other. A deeper stretch for some muscles. And then sinking, crossing the wrists and separating clouds. Bringing attention to the whole journey, rising, turning, opening, releasing. There could be a mindful moment for each millisecond. No hurry, allowing the energy to just flow through the nervous system at its own pace, lifting, pushing, twisting, push and pull. And so we're turning to stimulate more circulation out into the hands. The hands are available for service in whatever communities we belong to, our family and friends and work and on and on and on. And so they develop tension and holding, and we twist them around a little bit, and that brings the energy out into the functional, most functional part of our muscle mechanical thing. So, where was I? Oh, now I got to open up the shoulders. thanks to the heat, I'm going much slower than usual. I usually speed up, anticipating the next move, but I don't want to overheat. So I'm slow and more relaxing today. Thank you, heat. Turning, gazing at the moon. So the images that we hold in our awareness contribute to the release. Gazing at the moon, not rushing through the yellow light so you don't get a ticket. You're gazing. Pressing across, feeling one leg engage while the other's resting, and then reverse. Then my favorite move is turning one palm in, one palm towards the earth, and a cloud drifts across the sky with the shadow following underneath on the earth. So the sky, the source of energy above, and the earth, the source of energy below, are transmitted through the human form in service to our communities, wherever we find them. But this gentle movement represents our commitment to serving the needs of all our communities. And sometimes we have to travel, so we take the weight forward and back. This is like walking in place, but it's called splashing in the sea. Riding the waves. And enjoying the music of the floorboards. The pigeon opens its wings, and the arms are open and facing upward and turning down. Pigeon's been curled up all night, and then the sun comes out, and the pigeon opens its wings to greet the day. Step to the other side, splashing. Riding the waves. And the pigeon opening, palms up. All right. Come back to the center. Just fold one hand inside the other. Take a few deep breaths. And reach for the sky. Sink to the earth. Thank you for joining me today. As Robert mentioned, we've got a chain of different teachers on Sundays coming up. I'll be here next Sunday, and someone else will be filling in for him on the following Sunday. And then the week after that, on Saturday, I'll be here from 10 till 4 with a workshop on Qigong. And we'll sit a lot, move a lot, and listen to poetry and just kind of tune in. Maybe the heat wave will be over.
Thank you.
Come. Can't get the thing out of these pockets there. Hold on to this first.
I am experiencing myself in a strange mood. Not so strange, actually, but rather happy this morning. I've been going to the Blues Festival and dancing a lot. And oddly enough, you know, the medical research is very clear on it that the most powerful antidepressant we know is cardiovascular exercise. Put that together with maybe medication and maybe some therapy, and a person could get downright happy, which is weird given the condition of the world, but that's another story. Anyway, I was sitting here smiling internally. It's like, wow, all those people left. The advertising was, I'm going to talk about the absolute foundation of a happy life. And they went off to do whatever the hell they're doing. Very weird. Because I meant it. I'm breaking the rule. I have two announcements. One is, I hadn't seen this. This is really beautiful. If you'd like to make a contribution today and don't have any cash, you can, we've got codes here. You can contribute through PayPal, Acceptiva, or Venmo. So that lives in the, it's so beautifully done. That, and also there was and this pertains to my talk today. There are these postcards in there too that someone put there, which are very moving. It's called the Every Woman Treaty. And I knew this statistic already. Do you know that 1 in 3 women in the world will experience violence in this lifetime? Mostly at the hands of partners. It shows how primitive we are. And there's a website, everywoman.org. So I want to put those back out there. Okay. Time. Oh, good. I have a favorite quote. The little book is called, I think, A Short History of Civilization. Can't remember the author, Canadian fellow. In that book, well, in the preface to that book, he says, in the time that we humans have had this brain, this size brain, a brain this capable, for 99.96% of our time, you get the size of that number, 99.96, we lived in small hunting and gathering bands of 50 or less. 0.04 was Mesopotamia, the beginning of what we call civilization. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? And the oldest people among us were 30. We didn't live very long. And we lived in a very tough world. And we didn't treat each other very well either. So we live in a sort of golden age in a way. The Buddha came along, the Buddha, Zoroaster, Jesus a little later, all the great world religions came along in the last 0.02. Consciousness. The ability to wake up and recognize who we are, what we are, and to become really loving. Because you can't be particularly loving when you're just scrabbling to get by. Right? Cultures break down. If there's even a hiccup in the food supply, culture breaks down. And then we wind up being not nice to each other. I'm pausing because there's something that wants to be said here that's not quite coming. Oh, I don't give these talks, by the way. This person sitting here he's responsible, but he's not the person who gives the talk. There's someone else inside that I try to listen because he's pretty remarkable at times. So do you know or experience anything more desirable than love? Is there anything, has there been anything in your life that's been more satisfying than looking into the eyes of another person without fear? I don't. So how do we cultivate a person, a relationship, a community where we really experience love? It does require safety. And so way back in the time of the Buddha, 2,600 years, he, of course, spoke about how to get along with each other, how to behave. Because if we're not behaving well, we're in battle with each other. Right? If we allow, oh, this is the other thread, good. I believe in science. The Buddha was a scientist. And he carried out an experiment with an N of 1 to see, is it possible to wake up? Is it possible to become really loving? Is it possible to not fall victim to the animal impulses that we have? Is it possible to stop killing each other? Is it possible to gain control over our emotional reactivity? And he found that the answer to all those things was yes. And he also figured out how to help people train themselves to actually be loving and kind and generous. So, something like 99.8% of all species that ever walked the earth are extinct. And along the way, there have been remarkable experiments carried out in terms of consciousness, with us we are the living edge. We are the cambium layer, like in a tree, of consciousness evolution on the planet. And we have a ways to go. But as the Buddha showed, and many other great teachers, it is possible to go the rest of the way and really wake up and become capable of seeing that everyone else is who we are, that there's only one of us here. And that, of course, then, I don't have very many Christian quotes, despite my Catholic childhood, but one quote from Jesus was, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." And that was not, I don't think he was speaking metaphorically. He said, love them because they are yourself. And you do something to them and you're actually doing it to yourself. And that changes everything, right? So, we have the same brain as the crocodiles. On top of that, we have the same brain as the mammals. And on top of that, we have the brain of the human. And that brain is complex. And it's not fully developed when we're born. In fact, it's very, very tiny. I mean, its capacities are vastly more. In one of my incarnations in this lifetime, I had a stepdaughter who was adopted from Guatemala. And her mother almost got her at 8 months, but politics intervened and she didn't get her till 18 months. And then when she got her, she was 40 pounds overweight. And she hadn't been comforted very much at all. And we discovered, much to our chagrin, reactive attachment disorder, which means she didn't have empathy. And the last I saw of her, she was in and out of jail and a meth addict. And not uncommon for people with that injury. And what happens is, as when we're born, the bonding happens and the child is upset and the parent comes and comforts the child and co-regulates with the child and the child goes, ah, and their prefrontal cortex develops the place that develops empathy. It's developed through interaction with other people. That doesn't have to happen if we're not cared for. And if we don't develop that capacity of brain, then we don't sense our oneness with other people. And we don't know what to do with it. We don't have treatment for it. Such people wind up often in jail and almost, we were very much involved in learning about this at one point. We were in family groups and most of the people on death row, if one tests, you do a PET scan of their brain, that part of this cortex doesn't light up. So they, like all of us, are doing their best, but they don't have the tool to actually be empathic for another person. So, not to belabor that, we have in us this very primitive part. And it can be very greedy, it can be very hateful. It's an important part, but there's something else to develop. And we do that through meditation, but we also do it through following a set of precepts, a set of guiding precepts. And I actually mean it when I say, this is the foundation of a happy life. In all spiritual traditions, there are rules. There's the 10 Commandments, and there's always some set of beliefs, some set of practices that keep us from tearing each other apart. And the way the Buddha taught it is really elegant. And how to do it. I think I'll just speak them. I will speak them, and this afternoon I will put them on my blog, on my website. If you want to see them, go to robertbeatty.com and look for blog, and there will be a posting of this. So I'm going to just speak them through with the second edition of each one I wrote. It's the positive statement I wrote 25 years ago or so. So it goes like this. Now, one more piece before I do that. These are not commandments. These are more like physics. And if you want to be happy, then they're the rules. And it's up to you. They're also experimental hypotheses to be tested. So they're not, and they're also not at all about guilt. They're about wake up. So they go like this. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from killing other beings. My teacher, Ajahn Sumedho, put it more simply. He said, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from killing humans. Totally different world. The positive statement of that is, I aspire to become kind and of service to all beings. Second, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. It's a diabolical statement, the way it's worded, because I'll come back. The positive statement of that is, I aspire to become a fountain of generosity. Third, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. Positive statement. I aspire to use libido, life energy, to bring love, connection, and beauty into the world. Number 4, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from unskillful or harmful speech, slander, gossip, lying. I aspire to use speech to create connection and peace and love in the community. Number 5, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from intoxicants and intoxicating behaviors that cause confusion and dullness in the mind. The positive statement, it is my heartfelt desire to cultivate love, compassion, awareness, mindfulness. That's the waterfront. That's it. Now, I'm going to go through them one at a time. In my meditation the last few weeks, I taught a retreat at Brighton Bush just last week, and I got in pretty deep in my own practice, and I remembered a few of the things that I did in my youth. It wasn't a bad youth. I mean, I didn't really misbehave as some people do, but there's some things when I think about it, it's like I kind of always think, oh, damn, I was so ignorant. And one of them actually was, there should be a course early in puberty in which they tell us how to say to somebody, you know, I don't want to go out with you anymore. Right? I want to stop. I'm going to stop. as opposed to turning into nasty people. I feel sadness when I talk about that, actually. There's actually one woman who I tried back 15 years ago. I really tried to find her to say I was sorry, because I mean, I didn't do anything terribly awful, but I certainly was not, I was obnoxious. Anyway, I guess the modern term is basically I ghosted her. And that's become acceptable. It's almost acceptable now to send a text or maybe not even send a text, just stop responding to someone you've been quite close to. That's really violent. Whew. Okay. And as I'm saying that, I imagine you have some things in your own past that you feel, which, speaking of which, if you go to my website and look down, I think there's a forgiveness meditation. Yeah, I think there is on the podcasts. And I highly recommend that, because you don't need to carry those knots for the rest of your life. It's really possible to let go. You know why it's possible to let go? Because the past is over. Except when we think about it. So, precept number 1. Oh, one more piece, which is, these are the law. I'll use this. See this little light? What will happen if I let go of it? Anybody? It'll fall? Watch. Test 1. Ah! What will happen if I let go of it? Look at my little tremor. Ah! What will happen if I let go of it? What if I did this 1,000 times? We'd start to have a pretty good predictive capacity. We could create a theory, we could call it gravity. The precepts are hypotheses that we can test. And we can say, so what happens if I try to break this rule? And do I end up feeling crappy? Are there consequences for it? And it's not that I'm being punished for some extraterrestrial being. It's just the law. It's just the way it works. And the law is always in violation of our interconnection. No, that's not true. The law says if you violate your interconnection and interbeing, you'll feel bad. So I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from killing. If you go to my website, you can find a very short, very interesting, I think, little article I wrote 20 years ago about killing ratty when we had rats in the house, and I wound up killing them. And the first one was very difficult. And I gave it a nice burial and so on. By the 7th one, it was kind of like, oh, God, another rat, and it went in the trash. We can become inured, I think is the word. We can get used to killing. We train our young people in the military to kill without feeling too much. In fact, right now, around the world, there are people killing each other with pleasure, right? Because they think the other person is non-human, worthy of killing. Now, those people doing that killing are in deep doo-doo. Because somewhere in their lifetime, they're going to realize what they did, and they'll be crushed. I've done some work, not a lot, but some work with veterans of Vietnam War, and those who had their buddies killed beside them have PTSD. Those who killed other people have really PTSD. Now one could say, well, what about eating meat and that kind of thing? What the Buddha taught was that it's the act of killing, not the act of eating, that messes us up. Then you can think about that and explore. Thich Nhat Hanh, a modern, incredible teacher who died pretty recently, goes on and expands these precepts. And he said also, I won't kill, and I won't let others kill in my name. The positive statement of that is, I intend to become kind and of service to everybody. Now that we can have a wonderful time with. Because one then goes through the world, how can I be of service? Who can I help? Can I help my spouse? Can I help my child? Can I help the person next door? Can I stop and help someone having mechanical trouble by the road? Can I? See, you see that on the one hand, it's like, I'm so selfish that I'm packing a revolver and if you get in my way, I'll kill you. Or I'll go about finding ways I can be of service. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. When we take stuff that's not freely given, when we take stuff that clearly isn't ours, there's a little knot that happens inside. There's a Buddhist term for it that's really colorful, I think. It says, we violate our uprightness of heart. There's a story, I haven't written about this, but when I didn't do stealing at all as a kid, but in graduate school, the first time through, I stole a salad underneath the university complex. And I thought it was really cool. It's like, whoa, I stole something, yay. And 3 years later on a meditation retreat in India, it came to consciousness and it just bothered me terribly. I had to take my precepts again as a monk. And also when I was back in Toronto 2 or 3 years later, I went and paid for my salad. Because it was like, nope, that didn't feel good. And I mean, at the time, I was thinking when I was the monk and practicing, I was like, this is really ridiculous. It was a $3 salad. For God's sake, let me relax. But no. And so you can explore with this in your own life. How is it? What is it? Where in your life have you taken something that wasn't freely given? And what's been the effect on you? And we can, it's not just stuff. We can take more of someone's time. We can take more life energy from someone than they want to give. We can take more life energy from our own bodies than they want to give. And then the positive statement of that is really beautiful. I aspire to become a fountain of generosity. And you could contribute to PIMC. It's a great way to practice generosity. You could pay attention to yourself. And what is it that you really, 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 really want? And give yourself that. For many people, when their minds quiet down and they start paying closer attention, they really want an hour a day of meditation practice, or they really want to go to the gym, or they really want to take care of themselves. And maybe you're in a relationship with someone whom it's easy to give to, and you can be generous. You can be generous with your time. You can spend 5 more minutes listening to a child that needs you. Though a caveat on this is many of us who are drawn in this direction have significant codependency. And We overgive to others. We do that, you know, I'll give in the hope that maybe I'll get something back. And I worked in drug and alcohol treatment for many years and have a strong history of alcoholism in my family. And I learned many sophisticated definitions of codependency, but the one that really stuck goes like this. A codependent is a person who, when they fall off a cliff, someone else's life flashes before their eyes. Right? We don't know our own needs at all. And it comes out of childhood where the parents were not able to be very giving. And so the child overperforms in hopes that they'll be taken care of. So, generosity. I'd like to give an example or two. Well, here's one of my favorites. Once you start doing this, you'll find opportunities arise all the time. Oh, I'll tell you this. My daughter and her partner, David, Tara and David, gave me for Christmas 24 plastic bags. In each one, there was a $10 bill, a meal in a bottle, a meal in a box, sort of, a power bar or two, and a couple of other good things, and then a copy of Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese. And I carried these in my car. They didn't last long, but when there was someone obviously in need, I had something to give them. It meant I could keep some cash in my wallet, which was very helpful. But once you start doing that, you will find opportunities to be generous all over. And your giving is in a way selfish. Not badly selfish, but it's selfish because you know how good it feels. And there's one other, I have a favorite story, which was late at night over at a gas station not far from here. I was on my way home and I went in to get gas, and there was this African-American man and a big boat like a Chevy Impala or something. And he looked imploringly at me. I thought, oh, here it is falling in my lap. And he said, "We live in Scappoose. We're running on fumes. Could you buy us a few gallons of gas?" And I went, "Hey, right, it comes to me." And I said, "Sure, pull up at the pump," and told the attendant, fill the guy's tank. And then I looked in the car and the woman looked awful, ashen. I went around to her window and said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I've got 2 cracked teeth." And I said, "Have you taken any medication?" She said, "No." And so I went inside and bought some medication, a couple of bottles of water, and brought it out. She looked at me like I was from another planet. And then after the gas happened, he came up back to me and said, "Please give me your address because I want to send you the money." And I said, "You can't give me the money, but you can pay it forward." I told him about the movie. I said, "You got homework." Now here it is. This 5 years ago. I still take delight in every time I think of it, because we were together, right? We were helping each other. Oh, I got to go a little faster because I'm running out of time. So just think of little ways you can be generous with yourself, at least. Number 3, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. The prime directive of sexual reproduction is make babies. And the impulse to make babies doesn't give a rip about morality, doesn't care about marriage, or it's just get this happening. And so in every culture, there are rules on we wear rings to help protect us, and we have ceremonies and so on. And when that impulse arises, it's incredibly powerful. There's a question. I won't ask you to put up your hands this time, but please raise your hand. Oh, let's do it. Please raise your hand if you've ever done something really stupid around sexuality. Look around the room. Why? Because you're a bad person? Nope. Because you're dealing with astounding forces that don't care about personalities at all. So there's this rule of training. I won't do it. I won't do it if it's going to hurt myself or somebody else. And you can expand it. Thich Nhat Hanh expanded it. I won't do it if the other person will be violating commitments they've made. Right? Or, well, you can think of the variations. It's huge. Incidentally, in terms of, what's the word? What's the word when you give permission? You consent. Oh, yeah. My stepdaughter, well, this was 6 years ago at U of O, makes me teary. You couldn't register at the university until you did a 2-hour class on consent. Right? You don't get to go to this school unless you've been somewhat educated about consent. Powerful. And if you go on YouTube, you can look up a cup of tea. A cup of tea. It's a little video made in Britain about, among them is, if your friend told you yesterday that they'd like a cup of tea, but they say they don't want a cup of tea today, then don't force them. If you're with your friend and they pass out, then they don't want a cup of tea. It's really beautiful, powerful. Good to show our teenagers. Then a positive statement of that. I aspire to use libido, to use this to actually bring love into the world. To actually, when the time is correct, to make love, to really make that a beautiful connecting thing. Similarly, libido makes art, makes all kinds of things. I aspire to use this mysterious energy for good. So you can hear this isn't a puritanical message. It's really about, I don't want to feel bad. It also, of course, means rape and coercion is not okay. Oh, and one more, which is I had the occasion a few times in my life of being sexual when I really didn't want to. And it really felt bad because I was afraid to say no. Right? I didn't want to hurt the person's feeling, and it just felt awful. The precept says, don't do that. The fourth, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from false and harmful speech. Wouldn't it be great to teach our presidential candidates about that? Wouldn't it be great if public discourse simply said, our children are watching, you can't say this? No, there's one piece of it too, which is called idle chatter, which is talking for the sake of talking, which would eliminate most television, would certainly eliminate all those talk shows about sports, right? Well, we were sportsing this morning very well. The second half, we sports less well. Yes, the other team was substitute any sport. They're always saying the same thing again and again and again, and people are watching. It's bizarre. And we also talk to fill up time, space. Lying, slander. If Jim and I were talking, and we were talking about one of you, and maybe in a negative way, I'm going to use Paul. That Paul, he really is a pain in the ass, isn't he? And so we talk about Paul, and we're doing that to avoid intimacy with each other. We're not talking about our relationship. We're talking about the children. And the next time I'm with Paul, I've spoken badly of him. There's a wall. I can't be with Paul unless I were to say, I was with Jim the other day and I said these horrible things about you. Because then we could be intimate again. So, gossip, slander. Harsh speech. When we talk, it really makes sense to be kind. The purpose that the Buddha said, when you're going to speak, is it kind? Is it true? Can you do it gently, calmly, kindly? And is it the right time? And around speech, there was someone called Marshall Rosenberg who created nonviolent communication, which is learnable. And you can get the book, you can watch online. Even a few hours spent on learning the rudiments of nonviolent communication will change your life. And also lying. There's maybe I could put this on, I'll put this on the blog. There's a little book, it's not TV. There's a little article by Sam Harris on lying. And once you read that, you'll change your relationship to lying because it doesn't work. I know when I first read it, I changed several of my relationships around a lot. And it turns out that it worked pretty well. Okay, speech. Good. Let me just think if there's anything else. Gossip. Passing on information you don't know to be true. Exaggerating. The positive statement, enter Marshall Rosenberg. I aspire to use speech to bring harmony and connection into the world. I'm, as you may be able to guess, ridiculously extroverted. I hardly know what I'm going to say before it comes out of my mouth. I often discover what it is when my heart is open and I feel very comfortable in the world, and I find these things coming to mind to say to strangers that they're always, I was at the blues festival yesterday. It's like, oh my God, that's a beautiful dress. Or, wow, that hat. Or, there was a couple standing there, an African-American couple, my age or older, and they were dancing, and I was watching them. And I caught his eye. You were there when this happened. I caught this man's eye, and I walked up to him and I said, oh my God, you are the most exquisite couple I've ever seen. And they looked and they just melted. And it was true. So we can use speech, and you don't have to do that. That's for the crazy extroverts. But and occasionally it doesn't work. It could be intrusive or something, but mostly it does. I'll tell you one other. This was great. I was sitting in my car waiting for somebody, and it was just starting to rain. And a postal carrier, it was starting to rain fairly hard. A postal carrier came down and was passing my car. And I said, hey. And he looked in and I said, this is the voice of your mother. Why don't you have a raincoat? I have no idea where it came from. But he stood there in the rain and we talked for 5 minutes. I don't know where it came from. But we can have so much fun with speech. And it's about, wow, I'm appreciative of you. You can do that with loved ones too. And internally, to develop lots of congratulatory, appreciative, loving statements. Because you can also work with meditation on self-hatred. That's a different story. Now, going on to the last. Never let a single opportunity for a compliment pass unspoken, at least in your own head. Number 5, I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from the use of intoxicants that dull the mind, and intoxicating devices that lead to zombie behavior. Now that's a big one. Do you know that the use of alcohol doubled in the state of Oregon during COVID? And the use of legal marijuana went up 70%. Why? People were hurting a lot, couldn't distract themselves. My experience of substances in my life has been, my father had 6 siblings, all of whom were alcoholic. My father died drunk, never sobered up. My mother's side, there were 7 alcoholics. And my mother was a binge drinker. She had a stroke, so she wound up stopping. My own history has been that my use has been diminishing, really to the vanishing point. And what I've discovered is, even a little bit, 1 glass of wine in an evening, the next morning when I'm sitting in meditation, I'm pretty dull. Now, it's not like you're a bad person if you do, but it's the price that we're paying. Is the price worth it? So you can hear it's not about good and bad. It's about the price. About what do I really want to do? I want to walk through the world and feel loving. I want to face my own moods, my own depression, my own anxiety, and so on. I want to face it with kindness. And with the capacity of waking up and remembering, oh, this is a state. This isn't who I am. And these are monstrous. I watch my children. There's one particular example when my stepdaughter was in grade 12. I forget. No, when she was 12 years old. Yeah. We had a party. We had 12 girls over. Slept in the living room. I came out at like 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning. Every single one of them was on their phone with someone who wasn't in the room. And some school, is it LA? I forget where it is. They passed a law that the kids in the classroom can't have their phones. And the ACLU will be all over it too because what if they need to call their parent? And so they're not in the classroom. And we're creating, it was so hard for me when I came to meditation to not be constantly stimulated. Our kids, right? So what do we want to do? Sometimes we want to abstain. In fact, come next week to British Columbia and do a 10-day retreat and put your phone away. See what happens. Actually, on my retreats, I offer people that I will keep your phone for you if you want. And what I do, and I say, what I'll do is put it up here with the Buddha. And if you really need it, you can get it, but have a little barrier. The positive statement is, the opposite of addiction and distraction is being awake, being here. And it's such a relief to have a mind that will go quiet. To just be sitting and just be sitting. It's not hypercosmic flashing lights, it's just quiet. And when the mind can go quiet, then you'll notice when a thought arises, you'll notice that thoughts think themselves. There's not even someone thinking thoughts. And when anxiety arises, you'll notice, oh, that's anxiety. But we have to know how to inhabit a place that isn't consuming. It's like with the computer, if you want to work on the operating system, you shut down all the programs. So that's true for us. So these are the 5 precepts. There's more. There's another kind. I remember there's 8 precepts some people take when they go on retreat or they live their lives this way, which is no food after noon, no decorations of the body, no, and I forget the third one, forget that, but that's not the way a household or a person like us would be living their life. But these other five, and I will post them today so you can tune in on them if you want. They'll change your life. And if there's one of them that you're actively indulging, you might dial it back. Try for a day not to do it, or try for a week not to gossip, not to talk about anyone who's not present. All of a sudden, conversation goes. So, and it's not about guilt. It's about last thing. In any given moment in the mind, there are various mental factors that pop up. We're cultivating mindfulness, curiosity, energy, joy, tranquility, equanimity, and concentration. Those are the 7 enlightenment factors. We're reining in greed, hatred, restlessness and agitation, sloth and torpor, and doubt. We're reining those in, and we're growing these others. There's 2 mental factors which are of extraordinary importance. They're called moral shame and moral dread. Hili and otupa. And moral shame is something that you feel, that we naturally feel, it's built in if our prefrontal cortex is developed. When we do something that violates our ethical code, it doesn't feel good. Oh, I did something. I'm going to confess. The other night I was at the theater. I was watching, it's a new Pixar movie. Inside Out 2, really worth seeing if you're a meditator. Very fascinating. But I rarely do this. Well, it's embarrassing. I went out. I wanted to get something from the candy section, and I got it. And I went up to the counter, and it turns out that at that theater, you have to wait from the back of the line with the people that are coming in with their tickets. And I didn't want to wait that long, and I had it in my hand. And I said to the young man, "You mean, can I not just buy this?" And he said, "No, you have to wait in line." And I just dropped it on the counter and walked away. Now that was rude. I went to look for him after to make amends, but he was gone. So, and what there was when I did it, it felt good for a moment. But by the time I got back to my seat, it was the moral shame. It was like, oh, that wasn't nice. Wow. That poor kid had this gray-haired man act somewhat violently toward him. Yeah, awful. So it felt bad. And then I went, and moral shame is one. But then moral dread is the next time an opportunity to act in that way arises, you'll feel bad in advance and you won't do it. So this intervenes and keeps clearing up our moral and ethical behavior. Oh, that's a nice ring. So I've run over a little bit. I will stop. Thank you for listening. As usual, I hope what I just said will absolutely change your life for the better. You can. And now. So let's end just from where we are, I guess. We'll do it this way. I have a friend, he's a community member. His name is Masood. He's Persian. And he taught me this recently. When you're saying goodbye in Persian, the words are, put your hand on your heart and you go, Khoda Hafiz. Khoda Hafiz. And it means go with the one, go with God, go and realize your oneness with all things. We'll do it 10 times. Maybe, and turn around and see each other and do it toward each other. And I'll do this. You folks on Zoom, you can do it to each other's names. And we'll do it. And remember what it is. Go and feel really connected and safe. Khoda Hafiz. Khoda Hafiz. Khoda Hafiz. Khoda Hafiz. Khuda Hafiz. Notice how it feels. Khuda. Khuda Hafiz.
Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.
Hafiz.
3 more. Khuda Hafiz.
Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz. And 1 more. Khuda Hafiz. Thank you, dear friends. See you in a couple of weeks.